They say the frontier can swallow a secret whole. That old saloon piano could never drown out the hushed whispers of runaway brides' lost fortunes and hidden truths. Yet no rumor prepared Sheriff Caleb Watson for the sight he stumbled upon in the dim torchlight of his own jail. Beneath the dusty rafters and iron bars, there she stood barefoot in a torn satin gown, a trembling bride on the run. He couldn't imagine the twists of fate waiting to unravel. But when he discovered her true identity, the missing daughter of none other than Governor Sam Houston, Caleb realized he'd just stepped into a storm more powerful than any desert whirlwind. A single lantern flickered in the corridor, leading to the cells casting dancing shadows on the rough stone walls. Sheriff Caleb Watson paused. The old jailhouse in Desert Ridge, Texas, never felt particularly inviting, especially so deep in the night. Outside, crickets thrummed a steady melody. Inside, the smell of stale tobacco lingered like a ghost of rowdy drunks who had slept off their misdeeds behind these same bars. That night, Deputy Travis Mullins had delivered a vague message. "You'd better come see this." Travis wouldn't say more over the short ride from the Watson Ranch to the jailhouse. He only repeated that the situation was urgent and unlike anything you'd ever believe. So Caleb had thrown on his boots, strapped on his colt, and galloped into town. The clang of the front gate behind him sent echoes through the empty corridor. As he walked down the row of cells, he expected to see a troublemaking cowboy or a drifting gambler who had one whiskey too many. Instead, in the final cell on the left, he glimpsed a flutter of white. His heart thudded in his chest when the flickering lantern caught the shine of a torn satin gown. She was young, maybe 18 or 19, with wild chestnut hair that tumbled around her shoulders. A single tear traced a path down her dirt-smudged cheek. Her pale arms clutched the iron bars as though they could keep her upright. Caleb felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He was no stranger to folks who found themselves in desperate situations. But this was different. Travis cleared his throat. Sheriff found her in the alley behind the old livery stable. She was half sobbing, half running. Didn't say her name. Didn't say a thing, really, except that she needed to hide. Caleb stared at the woman, who seemed unable to meet his gaze. "Ma'am, I'm Sheriff Watson," he said quietly. "You look like you've been through some trouble. I'd like to help, but first I need to know who you are." She let out a shaky breath. "I can't tell you my name. It's too dangerous." Her voice trembled. "I just needed a place where no one would come looking." Deputy Mullins offered one of the cells because it was the safest place in Desert Ridge. He was kidding, I think. But when I saw those iron bars, well, it felt safer in there than out there. Caleb and Travis exchanged glances, hiding in a jail cell as a sanctuary. This was a first. "Who are you hiding from?" Caleb asked. Her gaze flicked to the shuttered window. "My fiancé," she whispered, hugging herself. I ran from my own wedding. He'll be searching for me. A runaway bride. It was almost too strange to believe. Yet the fear emanating from her every trembling motion told Caleb there was real danger afoot. Desert Ridge wasn't known for elaborate society weddings. It was a frontier town, dusty and hard. If she came from a wedding so grand that it involved satin gowns and a fiancé powerful enough to strike terror in her heart, that could mean trouble for them all. "Ma'am," said Travis the sheriff, "here's an honorable man. He's solved bigger mysteries than you might guess. If you can trust anyone, it's him." She looked from Travis to Caleb, searching their faces. Finally, she nodded, though tears still shimmered in her eyes. "Thank you for not throwing me back out there. I just couldn't go through with it. When I realized what that marriage was truly for, I had to run." Caleb's mind raced with questions. What was it for money, land, power? She closed her eyes like she feared the answer. "Power," she finally murmured. "A political arrangement. He's a colonel from a family of prominent men. My father pushed the match, told me it was for the best of the entire territory, not just for me. But I don't want to be a pawn. I need to escape it at any cost." A fresh tear slipped down her cheek. Something in her haunted expression awakened in Caleb a protective instinct. A quiet vow formed inside him he'd see this through, help her, if it was the right thing to do. Frontier justice, after all, was rarely kind to women who stood in the way of powerful men. "All right," he said softly. "You can stay in that cell for now, if that's where you feel safest. I won't let anyone harm you under my watch. My deputy and I will keep an eye out for any man who comes asking." She nodded once, relief flickering over her face. "Thank you." Yet as Caleb turned to Travis to sort out the details, a worrisome thought weighed on him. A bride on the run from a high-profile wedding with political ties that spelled trouble. If her father was as influential as she claimed, soon half the territory might be out looking for her. He wondered how many hours of peace Desert Ridge had left before a wave of riders galloped in demanding answers. Outside, a gust of wind rattled the shutters. The night was thick with tension, as if the desert itself was holding its breath. Caleb could practically feel the thunder of distant hooves, the rumors that would swirl through saloons, the threats that might come knocking at the jailhouse door. But for that moment, he simply said, "Get some rest, miss. We'll talk more in the morning." He handed her a blanket through the bars, lit a second lantern and set it in the corridor. "If you need anything, just call for me or Travis. We'll be here." She sank to the cot in the cell, cradling the blanket. "Thank you, Sheriff," she whispered, her voice so low he barely heard it. And with that, a strange hush settled over Desert Ridge's jail. Caleb and Travis shared a final look, equal parts confusion, curiosity, and a trace of dread. Before dawn, they'd see the shape of the trouble that was coming. For now, they waited with the runaway bride, the murmur of her tears, a silent confession that the danger was only beginning. Word traveled fast in a frontier town, faster even than a tumbleweed carried on the wind. By the time the first rays of dawn peeked over the ridges, half of Desert Ridge had heard hushed talk of a mysterious woman found in the jailhouse, while the blacksmith hammered away at dawn forging iron shoes for horses, and the cook at the Silver Spur Saloon flipped hotcakes for his earliest patrons. Folks whispered speculation about who she was and why the sheriff harbored her behind bars. Sheriff Caleb Watson rolled out of his makeshift bunk in the small office next to the cells. A quick check confirmed that the runaway bride still slept, though fitfully. As he straightened, he caught a glimpse of her face in the pale morning light. She was younger than he'd thought, with the kind of delicate features that bespoke an upbringing far from the dust and grit of a place like Desert Ridge. After stepping outside, Caleb greeted the day's pink horizon. Across the street, Ruby O'Connell, the saloon owner, gave a polite wave before heading inside to prepare for the morning crowd. The hush in Ruby's gaze told him she knew something was amiss. The sheriff walked over to Deputy Travis Mullins, who was securing the hitching post by the jailhouse. "We need to be discreet," Caleb said quietly. "I don't want a horde of curious folk in there." "She needs rest." Travis nodded. "Agree." but her presence is going to draw a crowd. Ain't every day we see a lady in a bridal dress tear-stained and trembling. Miss Ruby already asked me if it was some wayward bride from up in Abilene. I told her to hush for her own sake. Let's keep it that way, Caleb replied. For now. They returned to the jailhouse, finding the young woman awake, standing at the barred window, anxiety etched in her posture. "Morning, ma'am," Caleb said gently. "You feeling better?" She nodded, but didn't turn around. "As well as I can. Did anyone come looking for me?" He shook his head. "Not yet, but I suspect it won't be long." He paused. "Miss, if you want us to help protect you, we'll need to know your name. We'll need to know who's chasing you." She bit her lip. "My father's men will be searching for me," she said, slowly. "If you hide me, you'll be getting into a fight bigger than you realize." "Let us worry about that," Travis spoke up. "We can handle trouble. Done it before." She turned. Her hands trembled, and tears threatened again. "My name is Charlotte," she said at last, her voice shaking. "Charlotte Houston." Caleb frowned. The name rang a distant bell, though he couldn't place it. "Charlotte Houston," he repeated. "All right. And your father?" She swallowed. "Governor Sam Houston." It was like a thunderbolt cracked the silent morning. Even Travis gasped. Sam Houston was more than a local official. He was a towering figure in Texas history and politics, a man as legendary as the prairies that stretched across the Lone Star State. The idea that the girl standing before them was his daughter News didn't get any bigger than that. "This is trouble," Caleb's mind said. "Big trouble." Charlotte stared at the floor. "You see now why I can't go back. The wedding to Colonel Edgar Carlisle was arranged to strengthen political ties. My father, he insisted. But Carlisle, he's cruel. You don't know the things I've seen him do." Her voice quavered with real fear. "He only cares about power. I can't marry a man who beats his subordinates or bribes half the territory to do his bidding. I won't be part of his empire of cruelty." She lifted her gaze, desperation shining in her eyes. "I wasn't raised to keep silent if I thought something was wrong, but my father wouldn't hear me. He said the marriage would unify two important factions in Texas. He told me it was my duty to help maintain peace." Caleb's pulse raced. He glanced over at Travis, who looked equally stunned. Then he leaned against the bars. "Your father is Sam Houston," he repeated, trying to let the gravity sink in. "You're the governor's missing daughter. My guess is that the entire territory is out looking for you, as we speak. Bounty hunters, local marshals, might even be Pinkerton detectives trailing behind. If Carlisle or your father's men realize you're here, they'll tear this town apart." She nodded, tears brimming. "I'm sorry for bringing that danger to your doorstep, but I had nowhere else to go. I traveled all night trying to find a place I could be safe. When I saw your deputy outside the livery stable, I just begged him for help." Caleb's sense of duty warred with caution. "Ma'am, we can't just hand you over to folks who'd do you harm. But we also can't ignore that you're the governor's daughter. If we help you hide, that's a direct challenge to your father and Colonel Carlisle. Not to mention it could be seen as us obstructing official business." He exchanged a look with Travis. "There has to be a better way than just stowing you in a cell." She exhaled shakily. "I don't want to cause you trouble. If you'd rather I leave." "No," Caleb said firmly. "We're not throwing you to the wolves. But we have to be smart about this. Let's think for a moment." Travis took off his hat, ran a hand through his hair, and replaced it. Sheriff, we could stash her somewhere less conspicuous. An empty stable or maybe old Bill Jensen's barn. But none of those places are safer than a locked cell with us watching. Caleb nodded, mind racing. We'll figure something out. In the meantime, let's keep her here on the condition she's comfortable. He paused, looking at Charlotte. Are you okay with staying a bit longer in that cell if it means no one sees you? She gave a small smile, watery, but sincere. Yes. Thank you. I feel safer behind these bars than I ever did in that carriage heading to my wedding. Caleb pushed away the wave of sympathy that threatened to overwhelm him. She was so young, thrust into a scenario beyond her control. We'll bring you a proper meal soon, and maybe some clothes that aren't torn satin. She nodded gratefully. Thank you, Sheriff. I'm sorry you've been pulled into this. Caleb didn't say so, but in his heart, he thought, if I don't help you, who will? Out loud, he replied, let's just keep quiet for now. But inside, he felt the dread building. A confrontation with Colonel Carlyle and possibly with Governor Houston's men was all but certain. Desert Ridge was about to become the center of a storm no one anticipated. He prayed that the threads of fate wouldn't unravel into tragedy. By midday, the sun was a white-hot coin in the sky, baking the dusty streets. Shopkeepers flipped their signs to "Open Women," bustled about with baskets of fresh produce from the traveling peddlers, and a small stagecoach arrived from the north, stirring the curiosity of locals who always wondered if new folks carried interesting stories or coins to spend. From the wide windows of the sheriff's office, Caleb surveyed the thoroughfare. A hush had settled over the town, as if everyone sensed a storm on the horizon. Earlier that morning, he'd quietly enlisted the help of Ruby O'Connell, trusting her discretion. Ruby, in turn, brought a plain cotton dress and a pair of worn shoes for Charlotte, along with a platter of biscuits and scrambled eggs. Charlotte had been grateful tears welling up again when she realized that strangers were more willing to help her than her own father seemed to be. Caleb sipped his coffee, the brew turning bitter on his tongue. He felt the weight of responsibility settle onto his shoulders like a lead cloak. He didn't kid himself if word reached Governor Houston or Colonel Carlyle that Charlotte was in Desert Ridge, trouble would be swift and merciless. The political power behind Carlyle was not to be trifled with. Travis, who had stepped outside, returned with a grave expression. Sheriff, we got visitors riding in. 2 men in black suits leading half a dozen mounted riders. They're asking folks if anyone's seen a young woman described as a runaway bride. Caleb cursed under his breath. They moved fast. Where are they now? Last I saw, they were talking to old Doc Mitchell near the post office. The riders are scanning every corner, checking doorways. They'll be here soon enough. Caleb drained the last of his coffee, set the mug down, and took a breath. All right, let's keep Charlotte in the cell out of sight. I'll talk to them. Moments later, the men arrived, dust swirling around their polished boots. One was tall and wiry, sporting a thin mustache that turned down at the corners. His sharp eyes took in every detail. The other was shorter, but broad-shouldered, his face set in a perpetual scowl. Each wore an expensive black frock coat that looked out of place in a frontier town. The tall man stepped forward, doffing his hat. Afternoon. I'm Simon Berkeley, personal aide to Colonel Edgar Carlyle. We're searching for a young woman who went missing last night. Ran away from her wedding, if you can believe that. He offered a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. We hear the sheriff might be able to help. Caleb forced a casual posture. "Sheriff Caleb Watson," he said, tipping his own hat. "Afraid I haven't seen any runaways, sirs. This is a small town. Somebody new would stand out." Berkeley's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. "You wouldn't mind if we take a look around? Then Colonel Carlyle is most anxious to locate his bride. After all, her father is none other than Governor Sam Houston. You understand, I'm sure. We have the authority and the resources to search as we please." Caleb bristled internally. "I can't stop you from walking through town," he said. "But don't cause a ruckus. Folks here are peaceable and don't appreciate outsiders making demands." The second man, the broad-shouldered one, spoke up with a sneer. "We'll do what we must. That includes searching your jail if necessary." Travis moved behind them, blocking the entrance with an air of calm defiance. But Caleb raised a hand. "No sense letting tensions boil over too soon," he thought. "You can have a look, though. I assure you we only have a few drunks who slept off a binge last night, and they're long gone. The cells are empty now." Berkeley's gaze flicked to Travis, then back to Caleb. "We'll see about that." He strode forward. There was no stopping them without direct confrontation. With a short gesture, Caleb signaled for Travis to open the door. May as well let them see an empty cell somehow. But inside, panic stirred. Charlotte was still in there. He prayed she was hidden. As the two men and their riders stepped inside the claustrophobic hallway, felt smaller than ever. Dust motes drifted through the slants of sunlight. Caleb led them to the row of cells. The first three stood open and empty, just as he'd said. Reaching the last cell, he kept his features neutral, even as his heart pounded. Berkeley peered inside the empty cell. The broad-shouldered man grunted, stepping closer to the iron bars. He angled a look at Caleb. "Seems you were telling the truth. But if you're hiding her, you'll regret it. Sheriff. Colonel Carlyle will take it personally." Caleb opened his arms in a gesture of innocence. "You've searched every corner, friend. I'm not in the business of misleading folks." Berkeley gave a short nod. "Fair enough, though we'll keep asking around." He glanced at his men. "Let's move on. If she's here, we'll find her soon enough." With that, they turned and strode out of the jailhouse. Travis looked at Caleb, confusion plain on his face. "How the devil?" Caleb motioned for him to remain quiet until the men were out of earshot. Then he led Travis to his office and closed the door. He walked to a heavy oak desk in the corner, crouched down, and slid it aside. Beneath the desk, a narrow trapdoor to the basement was propped open. Charlotte emerged, trembling a cotton shawl around her shoulders. "I told Miss Ruby to install a false bottom in that cell," Caleb explained quietly, "back when we had trouble with bandits who threatened to burn the place. She helped me fix up a small hidey hole. I never thought we'd use it for something like this." Charlotte steadied herself, exhaling relief. "I heard their voices. They're from Carlyle, all right. Simon Berkeley is his right-hand man. Thank you, I owe you so much." Travis shook his head in disbelief. "What's the plan now, Sheriff?" "They won't stop. They'll search the entire town, and if they come back here and get suspicious, they might tear the place apart." Caleb leaned against the desk. "I know. We need to move her out of the jail before they decide to come back with a search warrant or more men. But she can't just ride off. There are men stationed all around town, likely watching the roads in and out. We need a safer place to hide her until we can figure out how to get her out of Desert Ridge quietly." Charlotte's voice wobbled. "I never meant for innocent people to be in harm's way. Maybe I should just give myself up, face Carlyle. It's my problem, not yours." "No," Caleb said firmly. "We're in this now. And if Carlyle is truly the monster you say he is, letting him take you back by force isn't an option. We need another plan. Through the tiny office window, he glimpsed the men in black suits further down the street, questioning Mrs. Henderson at the general store. Townsfolk cast sidelong glances uneasy with these outsiders. Caleb thought of a friend, John Reynolds, a rancher, who lived about 5 miles out in the desert near the foothills. John was discreet and kind, a man who once sheltered orphans from Comanche raids before the Rangers arrived. If there was anyone who might hide Charlotte without question, it was him. But how to get her there without Carlyle's men noticing? He spoke his thoughts aloud. John Reynolds has a ranch not far. If we can slip out at night using some back trails, we might avoid detection. Once Charlotte is safe with him, we can figure out a longer-term plan. Travis nodded. That's probably our best bet. We should do it tonight after they've spent all day turning the town upside down. Charlotte took a breath, her eyes shining with gratitude. I don't know how to thank you. Caleb gave a grim half-smile. We'll accept your thanks once you're truly safe, Miss Houston. For now, just keep quiet and trust us. Somewhere outside, the clang of a hammer rang out from the blacksmith's shop. Across the desert, the wind kicked up dust devils, swirling ominously. Time was running short. Caleb could almost feel the walls closing in. If Carlyle's men discovered any hint of Charlotte's presence, Desert Ridge would burn under the colonel's wrath. But for now, at least, she was safe in the sheriff's basement hideaway. The day stretched on, each hour fraught with tension. Riders in black suits circled the town like buzzards, asking questions, offering rewards for information. For all his honest repute, Caleb found himself lying to neighbor after neighbor, feigning ignorance. Anxiety clawed at him, but he clung to the moral certainty that he was doing the right thing, protecting a young woman from an unholy alliance she never wanted. At sunset, he stared at the golden sky and whispered under his breath, "Hold on, Charlotte. Just hold on." Night draped Desert Ridge in a cloak of stars. The scorching heat of day gave way to a crisp chill, a faint breeze sending tumbleweeds scurrying down silent streets. Lamps burned low in the windows of the saloon and boarding house, but most townsfolk had retired early, unsettled by the presence of Carlyle's men. Caleb and Travis made final preparations. 2 horses were saddled and waiting in the shadows behind the jailhouse. A third horse, a sturdy mare named Belle, was set aside for Charlotte. Caleb had chosen Belle for her calm temperament. If they had to ride hard, Charlotte needed a mount that wouldn't spook easily. In the dimly lit office, Charlotte paced her newly borrowed boots, tapping softly on the floor. "Are you sure this is going to work?" she asked, anxiety sharpening each word. Travis set a hand gently on her shoulder. "We'll do our best. The desert nights can hide a lot of movement. We just have to be quiet. Colonel Carlyle's men might be posted near the main roads, but we plan to take the old canyon trail west. Nobody uses it anymore." Charlotte nodded, though her expression remained tense. "I'm sorry to drag you all into this. I know you risk your jobs, maybe even your lives." "We're men of the law," Caleb said simply. "The law isn't always about following the loudest authority. It's about protecting folks who need help. That's you, Charlotte. And if we don't do it, who will?" A slender smile touched her lips. "Thank you. Truly." They waited until the church bell on Main Street chimed midnight, a hollow sound that seemed to reverberate through the entire town. With a final glance to ensure the street was empty, Caleb gave Charlotte a silent nod. She pulled the hood of her borrowed cloak low over her head. One by one, they slipped out the back door and into the alley behind the jailhouse. The only light came from the moon overhead, illuminating the battered roofs and the dusty ground. A dog barked somewhere in the distance, but no human voices stirred. Carefully, Travis helped Charlotte mount Belle. Then he and Caleb swung up onto their horses. Without a word, they guided the animals towards the end of the alley, away from the main road. A hush blanketed them. Every hoofbeat sounded thunderously loud in Caleb's ears, but he knew it was just his nerves. They rode south first, using the abandoned blacksmith yard for cover. Then they circled around to the west, aiming for the canyon trail. Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that eyes watched them from the shadows. Yet no challenge rang out. No bullets whizzed by. Perhaps Carlyle's men were posted along the more obvious routes. Bit by bit, the dim lights of Desert Ridge receded behind them. The desert opened wide, bathed in pale moonlight. The terrain was a mixture of rocky outcrops and scrub cacti standing like silent sentinels. The hush was broken only by the wind and the steady footfalls of their horses. After half an hour's ride, Travis paused, scanning the horizon. "So far so good," he whispered. "We keep heading west. Follow the canyon pass. That'll lead us behind John Reynolds's ranch, where he's got some outbuildings." Caleb nodded. Charlotte swallowed nervously, her eyes darting at every shifting shadow. But she urged Belle forward, determined. They pressed on another mile. The desert night felt strangely alive. Crickets chirped, coyotes howled from distant ridges, and the horses snorted softly. Caleb couldn't help but appreciate the harsh beauty of the frontier. Yet every rustle of brush made him tighten his grip on the reins, dreading an ambush. Suddenly, Charlotte gasped and pointed. "Riders," she hissed. "Behind us." Caleb glanced over his shoulder. Indeed, in the far distance, perhaps a quarter-mile back, two figures on horseback were silhouetted against the moonlit horizon. They were coming fast, dust rising behind them. Travis Caleb called low. "Take Charlotte and get her to the ranch. I'll draw them off." "No," Charlotte protested. "They'll kill you if they catch you." Caleb slid his rifle from its sheath, jaw set. "I swore to protect you. If these are Carlyle's men, I'd rather meet them head-on. Deputy, you get her to safety, that's an order." Travis hesitated only a moment before nodding. "Stay safe, Sheriff." Then he spurred his horse, leading Charlotte away at a gallop. Their figures quickly melted into the darkness. Caleb turned his mount to face the approaching riders. His heart pounded, a surge of adrenaline fueling his every breath. He guided his horse behind a rocky outcrop, dismounted, and crouched low, his rifle at the ready. If these were travelers passing through, no harm done. But if they were Carlyle's men, he might need to fire a warning shot. Or worse. Moments later, two riders thundered close. Caleb recognized them by the moonlight, the broad-shouldered brute from earlier, and one of the black-suited lackeys, a younger man with a hawkish nose. They reined in near the rocky outcrop, scanning the darkness. "You see 'em barked," the broad-shouldered man. "Not sure," the younger man replied. "Thought I saw 3 riders heading west. Must be them." The colonel said the sheriff was likely lying. Caleb inhaled slowly. So they had been followed. He considered shouting a warning, but that might give away his position too soon. Instead, he decided to use deception. He rose from behind the rock with his rifle leveled. "You boys lost," he called. "It's a mite dangerous to be out here at night." Both men jolted in their saddles, spinning to face him. Sheriff Watson sneered the broad-shouldered one, shining the lantern he carried. "Fancy meeting you out here. Looking for something out on patrol?" Caleb lied. "Keeping the road safe." The younger man narrowed his eyes. "We saw you riding with 2 others, a man and a woman. Where'd they go? Sheriff Caleb hardened his gaze. That's my business. Now, unless you're planning to break the law, you best ride on. I won't have you harassing travelers on my watch. The broad-shouldered man laughed a harsh bark, echoing off the rocks. We know you're hiding the governor's daughter. Hand her over. We won't cause no trouble, otherwise Colonel Carlyle will have your head. Caleb's voice came out steady. Miss Houston isn't here, and if you threaten an officer of the law again, I'll see you in irons. His finger inched closer to the rifle trigger. The younger man stiffened. We've got backup, Sheriff. Don't be a fool. She belongs to Carlyle now. There's no sense in you dying over it. Caleb didn't flinch. Far as I'm concerned, Miss Houston belongs to herself, not to any man with a fancy title. He stepped out fully from behind the rock. Last warning. Go on your way. The broad-shouldered man's hand drifted to his revolver. I think we'll take you in, see what Carlyle wants to do with you. Lightning fast. Caleb raised his rifle and fired a single warning shot into the air. The crack shattered the desert silence, sending the horses rearing. Don't? Caleb growled. I'm not bluffing. For a tense moment, no one moved. The broad-shouldered man and his companion looked rattled, but not cowed. Then in a blur of motion, the younger man drew his revolver. Caleb dove to the side as a shot rang out, ricocheting off the stone behind him. He rolled, raised the rifle, and fired. The bullet clipped the younger man's arm, and he howled, dropping his revolver. The broad-shouldered man dismounted and charged with a guttural roar. Caleb barely had time to bring up his rifle before the brute rammed into him, knocking the weapon aside. They tumbled to the ground, fists swinging in the dust. The man's meaty hands gripped Caleb's throat, cutting off air. Spots danced in Caleb's vision. Summoning every ounce of strength, Caleb slammed his knee into the man's midsection. The brute grunted, loosening his grip. Caleb rolled free, scrambling for his revolver. The man tried to get to his feet, but Caleb aimed and said, "Don't move." Blood dripped from the corner of the man's mouth. His eyes burned with hatred. Nearby, the younger man cradled his wounded arm, glaring daggers at the sheriff. Caleb coughed, drawing a ragged breath. "Get on your horses and ride out of here," he ordered, voice hoarse. "If I see you in Desert Ridge again, you'll be picking bullets out of your hide." The broad-shouldered man cursed under his breath, but could do nothing but comply. He helped his injured partner onto his saddle, then climbed onto his own horse. They backed away, eyes never leaving the barrel of Caleb's gun. With a final glare, they turned and galloped off into the darkness. Caleb sank to his knees, adrenaline giving way to exhaustion. Blood trickled down his temple, where he'd hit the rocks. His throat felt raw from the brute's grip. But he was alive, and for now, Charlotte was still safe. He retrieved his rifle, mounted his horse, and urged it west, hoping Travis had guided Charlotte to the ranch by now. As he rode, the desert wind whistled around him, as though the land itself breathed relief that the violence had passed for the moment. But in Caleb's heart, he knew the confrontation with Carlyle's men was far from over. They'd be back with more numbers and more wrath. One way or another, they intended to reclaim Charlotte Houston for Colonel Carlyle. An hour later, the faint glow of lantern light guided Caleb to the outskirts of John Reynolds's ranch. Nestled against low, rocky hills, the ranch comprised a modest house, a large barn, and several smaller outbuildings. The fence lines stretched far, holding cattle that slept soundly under the starry night. In the hush, the soft lowing of cows and the rustle of wind through mesquite bushes were the only sounds. Caleb gently knocked on the barn's side door, following Travis's earlier instructions. John Reynolds, a tall, lean man with a kind face, appeared in the lantern glow. He recognized Caleb immediately. "Sheriff," he whispered urgently. "We were worried you got yourself shot. Travis is here with the young lady." He ushered Caleb inside. Within the barn, a small stall had been cleared out, fresh hay scattered on the floor. Travis stood guard at the door, arms folded, while Charlotte sat atop a wooden crate, shoulders slumped in fatigue. Relief flashed in her eyes when she saw Caleb walk in battered but alive. "You're hurt," she exclaimed, rising to her feet. "What happened?" Caleb waved off her concern. "Nothing that won't heal. Ran into 2 of Carlisle's men. They're gone now. We best assume more'll come sniffing around." John Reynolds closed the barn door, latching it securely. "I've set up a quiet place in the loft for Miss Houston," he said. "Got a cot and some blankets. She'll be safe from prying eyes." Charlotte shot him a grateful smile. "Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. I appreciate your kindness." John gave a humble shrug. "The sheriff here's done me more than one good turn. Helped out when raiders threatened the ranch a few years back. I figure I owe him a debt. Besides, any friend of his is welcome. We'll keep you hidden as long as you need." Caleb sank onto a wooden stool, letting out a long breath. "At least you'll be safer than in town," he told Charlotte. "But Carlisle's men will be checking every settlement. John, I'm sorry to drag you into this. Once I figure out a plan, we'll move her on somewhere else." John folded his arms. "Don't apologize, Sheriff. I'm no friend to bullies and tyrants. If this Colonel Carlisle is half as bad as you say, I'm happy to do my part." Travis spoke up, voice low. "We should rest tonight. Tomorrow I'll ride back to Desert Ridge. Keep an eye on Carlisle's men, feed them a story about how we chased a lead into the next county. Meanwhile, Sheriff, you can stay here and plan your next move." Caleb nodded. "That's good. But keep your head down, Deputy. If they suspect you, they might not let you off so easy." Travis gave a weary grin. "Don't worry about me. I've handled worse." With that, he clapped Caleb on the shoulder and headed out, leading his horse quietly into the night, bound for home. John guided Charlotte to the barn's loft, a cozy space lined with bales of hay and a simple cot in the corner. A few spare lanterns hung from wooden beams. "It ain't a palace," John said apologetically, "but it's quiet. No one's around to ask questions." "It's perfect," Charlotte replied. "Better than a cell, though I was grateful for that, too." With a small smile, John bid them good night, closing the hatch to give her privacy. Caleb lingered below near the barn door, leaning against a post. Now that the adrenaline wore off, exhaustion claimed him. His body ached from the fight, and the weight of the situation pressed heavily on his mind. After a few minutes, Charlotte came back down the wooden ladder, carrying a lantern. She approached Caleb, biting her lip. I just wanted to thank you properly. I know you almost died out there tonight." Caleb exhaled. "I was lucky." He studied her face, so young yet already burdened by so much. "Miss Houston, you sure you want to keep running? If your father is as determined as Carlisle, there's no easy path for you." She squared her shoulders. "I'm sure. I can't go back to that life. I'd rather live in a barn, constantly looking over my shoulder, than be forced into a marriage with a man like Carlisle." A spark of determination lit her eyes. "I'll find a way to speak to my father, to show him Carlisle's true colors. But not as some captive bride. On my terms." Caleb admired her resolve. "I'll do everything I can to help you get that chance. I have some connections to the Rangers. Perhaps I can persuade them to mediate. If we expose Carlisle's misdeeds, maybe Governor Houston will call off the wedding for good." Charlotte nodded. hope shining through her exhaustion. That's all I want, a chance for the truth to come out. My father's a good man. Misguided, maybe, but I know he wants what's best for Texas. He just can't see who Carlisle really is. Caleb rubbed a hand over his face. All right, I'll do some thinking. For now, rest. You're safe here. She offered him a timid smile, then turned and climbed back to the loft. The lantern's glow retreated, leaving Caleb in semi-darkness. Outside, a lone coyote howled its call, a reminder of the untamed wilderness, and the untamed storm that's about to break. Morning arrived in a burst of brilliant sun, bathing Reynolds' ranch in gold. The cows ambled through the pasture and stable hands carried on their usual chores. To an outsider, it would look like any normal day. But for Caleb and Charlotte, tension boiled beneath the surface. Over a quiet breakfast in the ranch's modest kitchen, John Reynolds updated Caleb. One of my ranch hands went to Desert Ridge at sunrise. Says Carlisle's men are fanning out searching properties near town. They'll probably head this way by mid-afternoon. Caleb nodded grimly. Then we don't have much time. Charlotte sipped coffee, the steam rising around her face. Anxiety pinched her brow. What do we do if they show up? Caleb considered the question. We have a few options. We could hide you somewhere on the property until they leave, but that might not be enough. Carlisle's men might search thoroughly. Another option is to stage something, perhaps claim you're a hired hand disguised as a boy, or that you're John's distant cousin. But that could crumble under scrutiny. Or John said, his eyes flicking to Charlotte. We could try to get her out before they arrive. There's a stagecoach route running south in the next county. If she could get on that stage, she might make it to a bigger city like San Antonio, where she could find safe haven. Charlotte looked uneasy. Alone, I'll be vulnerable. If someone recognizes me, word could spread. Caleb drummed his fingers on the table. I might have a better idea. I know a Texas Ranger captain, James Dunn. He's a fair man, respects Sam Houston, but also upholds the law without favoritism. If we can reach him, he might get an audience with the governor and explain the situation. The trick is getting Charlotte to him without Carlisle intercepting us. Where's Captain Dunn stationed? John asked. Last I heard, he was near Fort Mason a few days' ride north. We'd have to slip past the men in black suits. That means waiting for them to come here, let them search, see nothing, and leave. Once they move on, we ride. Charlotte's eyes lit with cautious hope. That might work. Captain Dunn could speak reason to my father. If I can just avoid Carlisle until then. She trailed off, nerves returning. But what if Carlisle is with them when they arrive? Caleb reached for her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze before quickly drawing back. We won't let them take you. I promise. A knock at the door startled them. One of John's ranch hands poked his head in, tipping his hat. Mr. Reynolds. The men from Desert Ridge. They're coming down the road. Must be half a dozen riders. John tensed. They're earlier than we expected. Quick, let's hide Charlotte. They jumped to their feet. Charlotte rushed for the barn, but John shook his head. They'll look there first. Try the old root cellar behind the house. It's small, but they might not think to check if we're careful. Caleb guided Charlotte out the back door, across a small yard where chickens pecked at the ground to a modest shed behind the house. Inside a trap door led down into the root cellar, a cramped, dark space used for storing potatoes and root vegetables. They helped Charlotte down, gave her a lantern, and carefully replaced the trap door. A pile of burlap sacks was arranged on top. Caleb and John hurried back into the house, adopting casual poses as the riders arrived. Sure enough, Simon Berkeley led the group with the broad-shouldered brute and a few other black-suited henchmen. Dust clung to their boots and coats. Berkeley dismounted, tipping his hat with mocking politeness. "Mr. Reynolds." "Sheriff Watson," he said coolly. "I trust the morning finds you well." His gaze swept the house and surrounding yard, clearly searching for signs of Charlotte. John feigned a smile. "What brings you all the way out here, Mr. Berkeley?" Berkeley's lips curled. "We're looking for a runaway bride. Governor Houston's daughter, to be exact. Word around town is you're a charitable sort, Mr. Reynolds, taking in folks who need a place to stay." John shrugged. "I help travelers on occasion. Haven't seen any fancy brides around here, though. Just the usual ranch hands." The broad-shouldered man stepped forward, glaring at Caleb. "We found your deputy in town. He says you've been out here all night, Sheriff. Hard to believe you wouldn't know if someone turned up." Caleb shrugged. "I came out here to check on John's property. Bandits have been spotted in the region. Figured I'd spend the night." Berkeley narrowed his eyes, glancing at the house. "You won't mind if we take a look around, then?" "Top to bottom." John forced a polite tone. "I mind, but I can't stop you. Just don't go breaking anything." Berkeley signaled his men. They spread out, searching the barn, the stables, the fields. The broad-shouldered man strode into the house, ransacking rooms with an air of practiced hostility. Cupboards were flung open, closets upturned. A stable hand tried to protest, only to be shoved aside. Caleb and John followed to keep watch, hearts pounding. With every passing moment, the tension ratcheted higher. The men in black suits opened chests and tossed aside linens, ignoring John's cold stare. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they returned to Berkeley's side in the yard, shaking their heads. The broad-shouldered man growled. "She ain't here." Berkeley studied the property a moment longer, his gaze lingering on the shed. "What's that building?" he asked, pointing. "A storage shed," John said quickly. "Tools and seeds. You're welcome to open it." They approached. Caleb's pulse thundered in his ears. The broad-shouldered man stepped inside, rummaged around among the sacks of feed and garden implements. After half a minute, he re-emerged, dusting off his hands. "All clear," he muttered. Berkeley gave the ranch one last, sweeping look. "Well, Mr. Reynolds, I appreciate your cooperation," he said with a sneer. "Colonel Carlyle is quite determined to find Miss Houston. If you do see her, I trust you'll inform us." John forced a tight nod. "Sure. Now if you're done, I've got a ranch to run." Berkeley tightened his reins and swung onto his horse. "We'll be on our way," he said. "But I warn you, if she's hiding here, you're crossing a powerful man." He tipped his hat in mock courtesy. "Good day." With that, the riders galloped out, kicking up dust as they disappeared down the road. John let out a shaky breath. Caleb stood watching, scanning for any sign they might circle back. Finally, after they were out of sight, the men returned to the shed. Caleb moved the burlap sacks, opened the trapdoor, and helped Charlotte emerge. She was pale, trembling, but her eyes shone with relief. "Thank you," she whispered. "I thought for sure they'd find me." Caleb's chest still hammered. "Me too," he admitted softly. "We dodged a bullet." John exhaled, pressing a hand to his brow. "They'll be watching now. You can't stay here much longer." Charlotte's lips formed a determined line. "We have to get to Captain Dunn. That's our only hope. Caleb nodded. At nightfall we'll leave. He looked to John. We'll take enough supplies to ride north. I can't thank you enough for your help. John waved it off. Just be careful. You've made enemies with powerful men. I hope Governor Houston is as decent as Charlotte thinks. Otherwise this could get worse. Charlotte swallowed hard. He is, she said, more to convince herself than anyone else. Once he hears Carlyle has threatened violence, he'll have to see reason. Caleb placed a hand on her shoulder, gently steering her back into the house. Until then, we'll keep you safe. He meant every word, but the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on him. They were about to embark on a perilous journey with Carlyle's men, tracking them every step of the way. Even so, in that small moment of reprieve, a spark of hope flickered. Perhaps by some miracle, the truth could prevail in this lawless landscape. That night, under a moon polished silver, Caleb and Charlotte set off from Reynolds' ranch. John Reynolds had provided fresh horses and a week's worth of provisions. As they departed, he tipped his hat. "Godspeed," he murmured. They rode in silence. At first, the desert stretching around them like an ocean of shadows. Charlotte held her head high, but Caleb could see tension in her posture. He admired her resolve. She hadn't flinched once, even with half of Texas chasing her. After several hours winding through arroyos and narrow ridges, Caleb spotted movement ahead. Riders silhouetted at the top of a distant hill. "Damn," he muttered. "They've blocked the pass." Charlotte peered ahead. Carlyle's men. No one else would be out here at this hour. Caleb veered left. "We'll circle wide." But the riders gave chase, their hoots echoing across the night. Caleb and Charlotte galloped hard, trying to outdistance them. The terrain narrowed into a rocky gulch, a dead end, with a steep ravine ahead. They were trapped. Behind them, half a dozen riders formed a grim line. At the front, Simon Berkeley called out, "End of the line!" "Sheriff." The broad-shouldered brute added, "Hand over the girl, or you both die." Caleb turned to Charlotte. "There's a narrow opening to the left. When I start shooting, ride hard through it. Don't look back." Her eyes widened. "No, I won't leave you. You have to. Get to Captain Dunn. Promise me." She swallowed, then nodded. "I promise." Berkeley raised his revolver. Last chance, Caleb fired, catching one rider's shoulder. Chaos erupted, gunfire, hooves shouting. Charlotte bolted left, weaving through the confusion. Caleb dismounted behind a rock and returned fire, forcing the others to scatter. But the brute tackled him mid-step. They crashed to the ground, fists flying. Caleb fought hard, but the man's strength pinned him. As he began to choke Caleb, a rifle cracked, blood bloomed on the brute's back. Travis emerged from the shadows. "Need a hand, Sheriff." Caleb coughed, barely managing a nod. They took Charlotte. "Then let's get her back." They rode hard after the fleeing riders. In a moonlit clearing, they found Berkeley holding Charlotte at gunpoint. 2 other men flanked him. "Drop your weapons," Berkeley shouted, "or she dies." Caleb and Travis froze slowly, setting their guns down. Berkeley sneered. "You should have let her go. Carlyle owns everything now, including the governor." Charlotte glared at him. "My father won't let you get away with this." A commanding voice rang out from the darkness. "Drop your weapon, Simon Berkeley." Dozens of mounted men appeared, torches blazing. At their head rode a man in a ranger's hat. Captain James Dunn. Beside him sat a grave-faced governor, Sam Houston. Father Charlotte gasped. Berkeley panicked. "Governor?" She was running. I was bringing her back." Houston's eyes burned. "Let her go. That's an order." Berkeley hesitated, then released her. Charlotte rushed into her father's arms, sobbing. "I thought you wouldn't believe me," she said. "I've made mistakes," Houston replied, voice cracking. "But no more." Dunn turned to Caleb. "You did the right thing, Sheriff. Carlisle's under investigation. We've got enough to bring him down thanks to your delay tactics." Governor Houston stepped forward. "I can't thank you enough, Sheriff Watson. You've protected what I almost lost, my daughter, and my conscience." Charlotte met Caleb's gaze. "You saved my life." He tipped his hat voice thick. "Just doing my duty, Miss Houston." As dawn painted the sky pink and gold, they rode back toward Desert Ridge. Berkeley and his men were arrested. Charlotte, free at last, rode beside her father, ready to begin a new chapter on her own terms. Sometimes the greatest courage is found in the quiet acts of mercy and the unyielding resolve to protect the vulnerable. So, Sheriff Caleb Watson's choice to hide Charlotte Houston, a stranger in a wedding gown, risked all that he held dear. Yet that single act of compassion sparked a chain of events that unmasked a corrupt colonel and forever changed the fate of a governor's daughter. It proved that decency and truth could triumph even in the Wild West's darkest corners. Thank you for listening to this extraordinary tale of honor, bravery, and hope. If this story stirred your imagination, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Spread the word to friends who crave a riveting real-life Western drama packed with twists. There are countless untold frontier stories waiting to captivate you. Be sure to join us for the next adventure. Until then, ride safe and stay true to what's right.